I'm Leon Kluger, and growing up surrounded by plants, I've lived and breathed everything green. As a garden designer, I've been privileged to represent South Africa on the global stage when it comes to flower shows and garden shows. Trends come and go, but something we can't deny is that South African plants have contributed tremendously to the world horticultural industry. South African flora, especially the plants in the fynbos region, are used around the world not only as pot plants or garden plants, but also as cut flowers. The southern tip of Africa is home to a tremendous amount of diversity when it comes to plant species. There's about 9,000 species growing here and counting. 70% of the plants that grow here occur nowhere else on the globe. The lengths these plants have gone to outwit and adapt to their specific habitats is testament to the millions of years of evolution on these mountains. So why is it that the fynbos region of southern Africa is so rich and diverse in plant species? What strategies do these plants have to follow and adapt to be so successful in the southern tip of Africa? In this series, we'll be traveling across the Cape, showcasing some of the most interesting and iconic plants in the fynbos region. From the seemingly insignificant little plant between the rocks to the most iconic giants of the fynbos forests. Cape Floral Kingdom is a place teeming with life. The plants and wildlife in this part of the world have formed intensely intricate relationships over millions of years of evolution, giving rise to the dazzling display we see today. But underneath the surface, not all is what it seems. The Cape is home to a group of plants which seem to have a more sinister intention. These are the carnivorous plants. Plants which have evolved to supplement their energy needs by developing a taste for insects. Using clever engineering and cunning deception, these seemingly innocent-looking plants have managed to thrive in the fynbos underworld. There's a plant group that have captivated the imagination of plant collectors and movie makers alike. It's an alien-like plant group. A plant group that almost doesn't fit the word plants. And they are the carnivorous plants. Plants that feed on living insects and amphibians, even little birds, to get extra sustenance. And in South Africa and the Western Cape, we have them as well. Especially the family Drus. And in front of me is Drus capensis. Drus has a strange relationship with insects. It needs them to pollinate its flowers, but at the same time it also needs to catch insects to survive. Talk about use and abuse. Now its flowers are interesting because they're only open for a short period during the day when the sun is at its highest, and that's the only window of opportunity it has to pollinate the flower. If we look at the structure of the Drus, you'll see that the leaves are modified and there are lots of little tentacles, and those tentacles have bright globules on the top of it. And the more sunny it is, the more it shines. And that shiny globule, that's what attracts the insect. So the insect flies around and sees this shiny plaything and wants to come and investigate. It sits on the leaf, and then the tentacles start to attach themselves, and the globule is like glue. The insect struggles, and the more it struggles, the more tentacles start to move themselves towards the insect, and the more stuck it gets. Now the leaves of Drosera is quite clever, because it can distinguish between it's a droplet of water, rain, or even a leaf that falls on the tentacles. If that's the case, nothing would happen. It takes a lot of energy to move your tentacles and to wrap yourself around the insect. So once it detects that this is a living organism, an insect, it will then slowly wrap itself around it. And then the enzymes and the acid will dissolve the insect from the inside out. Drosera is used around the world as pot plants. People keep them like pets, and the kids would feed them with little flies or insects and watch as the leaf wraps around the insect and eats them. It's a plant that's not difficult to grow. It just needs clean water, a lot of sun, and every now and then a fly in the room. But Drosera is not the only plant in this pond that has evolved into catching insects. There's another one that has an ingenious way of using its roots to catch insects. This carnivorous plant right here has adapted its roots to catch all the invertebrate that's swimming in this seemingly peaceful pond. So not all carnivorous plants manipulate and adapt their leaves to catch insects. This carnivorous plant right here has adapted its roots to catch all the invertebrate that's swimming in this seemingly peaceful pond. And this is called Utricularia, or the bladderwort. Now, this is a big colony. It looks like a bunch of algae floating around, but it's not. This is a massive colony or killing machine. So the bladderwort has this unique way of using pressure and difference in pressure to catch its insects, and I'll show you how. So let's pull one of the plants out. This is an individual plant. There are many around us. And if you can see on the roots, it's got little adaptations, almost little balloons. And those balloons are the secret in catching its prey. So the roots have special cells that start to develop, and they blow up like a balloon would do. And then they start to pump out the liquid and moisture that's inside the balloon. And that creates an immense pressure difference between outside in the water and inside the balloon. Now, when an invertebrate swims past, it touches little trigger hairs at the entrance of the balloon. There's a trap door. That trap door opens in a millisecond, sucking up with immense force the water inside the balloon. The bewildered invertebrate is sucked inside, and then the trap door closes when equalization of pressure occurs. The plant knows it and then sends enzymes to start to dissolve the insect and so feed itself. It's an incredible adaptation for a seemingly insignificant and small plant that most people don't notice. But using hydraulics, engineering to catch its insects, there's a lot that we can learn from this little bladderwort. You can see at the moment it's in full flower and it's shooting a lot of flowers coming from the bed below. It's important for Utricularia to set seed as well, as that's the easiest way for it to spread itself. The strong currents will take the seed, flow it downstream, and it usually gets attached to a bit of algae, and there it's set root, and so a new colony like this will evolve. It's beautiful flowers, it's snapdragon-like, bright yellow, and attracts many a pollinator. What an incredible, beautiful plant. But there are other carnivorous plants that unfortunately don't have the ability to absorb its prey. A very interesting and very rare carnivorous plant, a very big one. And I think that's the next one we're gonna find. I'm high on top of the mountains here in the Western Cape. It's cool up here, we're close to the sea. And here it's bog. It's heavily wet in winter and damp in summer. And in this specific area, there's a plant here that grows and is very rarely seen by people. It's a plant that has an incredible symbiotic relationship with an insect, and the one cannot live without the other. And the plant I'm talking about is the giant flycatcher, or Viridula gorgonius, this plant right here. We all know Drus, or the sundews. They need to catch insects in order to sustain themselves, to get enough nutrition. The same with Viridula, but the difference comes in the sundew can absorb the nutrition from the insects it's caught. It's got enzymes, but Viridula does not. It can't absorb any of the nutrients. It's great at catching them, but it needs some help. And that's where the insect comes in. And this insect, with this close relationship, is called Pomeridia, or the assassin bug. There are lots living on the plants at the moment. The leaves are full of tentacles and it excretes a glue-like substance. Once the fly lands on it, there's very little chance of escape. The vibrations of the fly struggling on the leaf calls and gives attention to the assassin bugs. They immediately hurry to the prey and start devouring it almost instantly. It's almost a feeding frenzy. Then the assassin bugs leave the skeleton to be on the leaf. There's no nutrition left. But the key comes in as when the assassin bug then excretes its droppings, and that it does on the leaf. And that is what the plant can take up as nutrition. It's much like how we can foliar feed our plants at home. And that is the same for gorgonias. So you might ask, how does the assassin bug not get caught on Viridula? all the other insects to get caught. They're stuck everywhere. But the assassin bug has developed a non-stick surface on its body, similar to what we would spray on our pans when baking a pancake. And that prevents the Pomeridia from being caught. There's also the flowers. It's in full flower at the moment. It's gorgeous flowers. How does it get pollinated? Because you have to be careful, because the flies and pollinators could get caught and they never get to pollinate the flowers. There are some bees and flies that tend to pollinate them too, but the primary pollinator for this plant is the juvenile assassin bugs, and they live in the flower and then pollinate it by trampling all over the pollen and the stamens. These plants can get up to 1 meter high, but one mystery that I still have with the plant is that what happens to the assassin bugs once the seasonal fires, which can come every 10 years or so, happen, because they can live nowhere else, and Floridula can't live without them. So how do they come back once they reshoot? That's still a mystery to me, but an extraordinary relationship that you cannot break between living organisms such as plants and insects. But upon closer inspection, there's something missing. I don't see any leaves. It's only flowers. In the dry undergrowth of old fynbos, there's some life happening. Bright colors emerging from this pale grey undergrowth. And it's quite beautiful. These flowers are stunning, but upon closer inspection, there's something missing. I don't see any leaves. It's only flowers. And that is the story about this plant. This is called Jaaposi Flora, or the ink flower. Now, the big shrubs above it, this is an erica, and during the daytime it's making food, it's photosynthesizing to feed it. But not all plants have that ability, and Jaaposi doesn't. It has no leaves, it cannot make its own food. This Jaaposi has made a plan. Whether it is clever or whether it's lazy, I don't know. But this Jaaposi is a parasite, and it is stealing the food that this erica is making. So underneath the soil, it's got roots, and the roots wrap around the roots of the erica above. And it's literally sucking out the nutrients and the water that the erica is providing itself. In the early days, the settlers had a use for Jaaposi. Its common name is the ink flower. So when the flowers dry out, they turn pitch black, and that was used to make ink. So Jaaposi is not only a beautiful flower, but it's quite a devious plant, stealing energy from all the plants around it. Some of them are very specific to which host they attach themselves. Some of them not. They just go for any food they can find. A very interesting adaptation of a plant not needing leaves. It only creates flowers, only creates seed. In this otherwise hostile environment, in the undergrowth of the fynbos, where hardly any sunlight reaches the soil, it would be pointless to have leaves, because you won't be able to photosynthesize because there's no sunlight. So Jaaposi made a plan. it decided it's going to use its energy to create beautiful flowers, attract pollinators and spread its seed. And instead of having leaves, it's going to steal its neighbor's food. It's quite clever, quite ingenious. Something so beautiful can be actually so devious. Soil is essential for the strength and well-being of plants. This is ultimately their food source. Now, soil in the Western Cape and fynbos is quite poor. A lot of this, as we can see in the cutaway of this piece of land, is stony, and it's all sandstone, all withered from the mountains above me. From big rocks to smaller rocks, to ultimately sand. It's very low in nitrogen. So the plants that have to adapt to grow in these soil conditions need to be small. There's just not enough energy for the plants to be giants. And during the summer months, the sandy soil dries out even faster. The sandy soil here is also well drained, so it might rain a lot, but the water seeps through very quickly. And in summer, when the heat starts to come through and the rain dissipates, this soil will dry out even quicker. And that is why the fynbos, well, has that name, fyn, because most of the leaves are very tiny and finely shaped. And that is to reduce water loss in this very poor soil conditions. Fynbos are mostly evergreen. That means that the leaves do not fall off during the resting period, and that energy that's held in that organic matter of the leaves and stems do not go back into the soil. So the soil gets poorer and poorer, and the new seed that fall every season don't have a lot of energy to germinate and quickly grow. That is why fires are so important in the fynbos region, because every 10 to 15 years when a hot fire goes through, all this organic material of the old plants get taken back into the soil. And that energy can be harvested by all the seedlings to grow into healthy, young, new plants again. And so the cycle can be repeated. In the next episode, join me as we delve into the world of colour, uncovering the reason why red has become the colour of choice for many of the Cape's most iconic summer flowering plants.